A Korean Mafia boss begged her to fake date him for 3 minutes to escape his forced wedding. Before we dive into this dangerous love story, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and let's step into this world together. Some desperate moments require desperate choices. And tonight, Hyun-woo Lim was about to make the most dangerous choice of his life. The Lux Gold Hotel wedding hall glittered like a jewel box designed to showcase Seoul's criminal elite. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting amber light across thousands of white roses arranged in architectural cascades. Guests moved through the space in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, their laughter echoing off polished marble floors while cameras documented every angle of what was meant to be the alliance of the decade. Yasmin Thomas stood near a towering floral arrangement, invisible in her simple server's apron over a red dress. At 26, she had perfected the art of blending into luxury spaces while remaining completely separate from them. She wasn't part of this world. She simply moved through it, refilling champagne flutes and collecting empty plates, trying to survive another double shift. "Ladies and gentlemen," a woman's voice cut through the ambient music like a blade wrapped in silk. Yasmin's eyes lifted automatically toward the altar, where the wedding officiant stood beside a woman dripping in diamonds and authority. The bride's mother, if the whispers around Yasmin were accurate, a woman whose family controlled half the underground economy in Seoul. "We are gathered to witness the sacred union of two great families." That's when Yasmin saw him. A man in a black tuxedo moving down the candlelit aisle with the wrong kind of speed. His posture was rigid, his jaw clenched, and his eyes swept the crowd with something that looked dangerously close to panic. Hyun-woo Lim. She'd heard the name whispered by other servers, spoken with a mixture of fear and fascination. The untouchable heir, the cold prince of the Lim crime syndicate, the man who never smiled, never faltered, never showed weakness. Right now, he looked like he was drowning, his eyes locked onto hers across the sea of guests. Yasmin's breath caught. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The music, the murmuring crowd, the oppressive weight of the chandeliers overhead. There was only the intensity in his gaze, the raw desperation in his expression, and the sudden, inexplicable feeling that her entire night was about to shatter. He cut through the crowd with purpose, guests parting instinctively as he moved. The bride's voice faltered. Bodyguards shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Cameras swiveled to follow his movement. Then he was standing in front of Yasmin. Up close, his face was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, storm-dark eyes, a mouth pressed into a line that spoke of years of holding back words he could never say. His tuxedo was impeccable, but his breathing was ragged, and a thin sheen of sweat dampened his hairline. He slammed one palm against the wall beside her head. Yasmin flinched, but didn't retreat. The floral arrangement pressed against her spine. His other hand reached for hers, fingers trembling as they clasped around her wrist. "Please," he whispered, and the word cracked in the middle like something breaking. "Pretend you're with me." Yasmin's heart hammered against her ribs. She could smell his cologne, expensive, understated, completely at odds with the desperation radiating from him. Behind him, she could see security advancing, the bride's family rising from their seats, confusion rippling through the assembled guests. "For how long?" she heard herself ask. 3 minutes. His eyes searched hers, pleading. "Just 3 minutes." Yasmin looked past him at the altar, where a woman in a white designer gown stood frozen, her expression transforming from confusion to cold fury. She looked at the bodyguards closing in, their faces blank but their intentions clear. She looked back at the man in front of her, this powerful stranger who looked like he'd rather die than walk down that aisle. And then she saw something in his eyes that made her decision. Not arrogance, not manipulation, pure, unfiltered terror. "Okay," she breathed. Relief crashed across his features so intensely it was almost painful to witness. His grip on her wrist gentled, but he didn't let go. Instead, he straightened, his mask of control sliding back into place with practiced ease. When he turned back toward the crowd, pulling Yasmin with him, his voice carried across the hall with deadly calm. "I apologize for the interruption," Hyun-woo said, his tone devoid of any actual apology. "But I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." The wedding hall erupted. Yasmin's hand was pulled into his, her body guided forward into the spotlight as hundreds of eyes turned to stare. The bride's scream cut through the chaos. Security guards barked orders into radios. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every angle of the scandal unfolding in real time. 3 minutes, Yasmin muttered under her breath, her pulse racing as Hyun-woo's hand tightened around hers. He glanced down at her, and for just a moment, the corner of his mouth lifted in something that might have been a smile. "I might need more than that," he whispered back. And as the wedding dissolved into chaos around them, Yasmin realized with crystal clarity that 3 minutes was about to change absolutely everything. If a complete stranger cornered you at a wedding and begged you to pretend to be their girlfriend for just 3 minutes, would you have the courage to say yes, like Yasmin did? What would flash through your mind in that moment? The flash was just the beginning. Within seconds, they were drowning in light and chaos. Yasmin's hand instinctively tightened around Hyunwoo's as reporters surged forward like a tidal wave, cameras clicking, voices overlapping in Korean and English, demanding answers neither of them could give. She had agreed to 3 minutes of pretending. Nothing could have prepared her for the hurricane of attention now focused on them. But as Hyunwoo pulled her closer, his arm wrapping protectively around her waist, Yasmin realized something crucial. This man wasn't just escaping a wedding. He was fighting for his life. "Mr. Lim." A reporter shoved a microphone toward them, nearly hitting Yasmin in the face. "Who is this woman? Can you explain what's happening?" Hyunwoo's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Yasmin felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the way his hand trembled against her hip. Maybe it was years of being invisible finally snapping into visibility. She turned toward the reporter with a smile that could cut glass. "I'm sorry," she said, her Jamaican accent deliberately pronounced, owning every syllable. "Are you asking who I am? Or are you asking why your invited bride isn't the woman standing next to him?" The reporter blinked, momentarily stunned. Hyunwoo's grip on her waist tightened not in warning, but in something that felt dangerously close to admiration. "Because if you're asking who I am," Yasmin continued, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall, "I'm the woman he actually wants to be with." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras exploded in a fresh frenzy of flashes, and then she heard the voice that could freeze blood. "Excuse me?" The bride, Ji-hyun Park, Yasmin remembered from the whispered gossip among the servers, cut through the crowd like a knife through silk. She was stunning in a traditional white hanbok overlaid with crystal embellishments, her makeup flawless, her expression absolutely murderous. She stopped 3 feet from them, her eyes fixed on Yasmin with the kind of hatred that promised violence. "Who?" Ji-hyun said slowly, each word precisely enunciated. "Do you think you are?" Yasmin should have been terrified. This woman came from a family that disappeared people, but standing there, with Hyunwoo's arm around her and 3 minutes ticking away, Yasmin found something she didn't know she possessed. Absolute audacity. "I think I'm the woman Hyunwoo chose," Yasmin replied calmly. "The real question is, who do you think you are?" The hall went silent. Even the reporters stopped moving. Ji-hyun's face transformed into something cold and calculating. "Hyunwoo," she said, ignoring Yasmin entirely now. "What is the meaning of this? We had an arrangement. Our families have an understanding." "Had," Yasmin interjected before Hyunwoo could respond. Past tense. "Because from where I'm standing, arrangements change when people fall in love." She felt Hyunwoo's sharp inhale, but she was committed now. 3 minutes or not, she was going to sell this performance like her life depended on it because his clearly did. "Love?" Ji-hyun laughed, but the sound held no humor. "You expect us to believe that Hyunwoo Lim, who has never shown interest in any woman, has suddenly fallen in love with a—" Her eyes raked over Yasmin's server apron with obvious disdain. "With someone like you? Someone like me," Yasmin repeated, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "You mean someone who actually cares about him as a person, not as a business merger?" Ji-hyun stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. "You have no idea what you've just walked into, little girl. You think you can interrupt an alliance between 2 of Seoul's most powerful families with your cheap dress and your fake accent?" "My accent isn't fake," Yasmin shot back, standing her ground even though Ji-hyun was now inches from her face. "And neither is what Hyunwoo feels for me." "Then prove it," Ji-hyun hissed. "Tell me, when did this alleged relationship begin? Where did you meet? What makes you think you're worthy of a man like him?" Yasmin's mind raced. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, cameras recording every second. Hyunwoo's body tense beside her. This was the moment where the lie could fall apart, where 3 minutes could become 3 seconds of exposure and humiliation. Instead, Yasmin smiled soft, genuine, the kind of smile that told a story without words. "We met 6 months ago," she said, the lie flowing smoothly from her lips. "At a cafe in Hongdae. I was working on my laptop, and he was there alone, reading. He looked so peaceful, so different from the man everyone expected him to be." She glanced up at Hyunwoo, whose expression had gone very still. "He didn't tell me who he was for 3 weeks. We just talked. About art, about music, about what it means to live a life that belongs to you instead of to your family's expectations. It was a beautiful lie, woven from the truth of who he seemed to be trapped, suffocated, desperate for something real. He told me about this wedding, Yasmin continued, her voice softening. About the arrangement, about how he felt like a piece on a chessboard instead of a person. And I told him, she turned back to Ji-hyun, I told him that he deserved to choose his own life, even if that choice was terrifying. Lies, Ji-hyun spat, but her voice wavered slightly. Is it? Yasmin challenged. Because Hyunwoo is standing here with me instead of up there with you. That should tell you everything you need to know. The crowd erupted in whispers. Guests pulled out phones, frantically texting. Security guards spoke urgently into radios, and Ji-hyun's carefully composed mask finally cracked, revealing the fury beneath. You will regret this, she said quietly, the threat clear despite the whisper. Both of you. Before Yasmin could respond, Hyunwoo's hand slipped from her waist to her hand, gripping it tightly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried across the hall with absolute authority. This wedding is over, he said. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. He turned, pulling Yasmin with him, and the crowd parted instinctively. Behind them, Ji-hyun's voice rose in a scream of rage. But Hyunwoo didn't stop, didn't look back, just kept walking with Yasmin's hand locked in his. They reached a side door, and he pushed through it, pulling her into a corridor away from the chaos. The door swung shut behind them, muffling the explosion of sound from the wedding hall. In the sudden silence, Yasmin became acutely aware of her racing heart, her trembling hands, the fact that she'd just lied to a room full of Seoul's criminal elite with a confidence she didn't know she possessed. That was, Hyunwoo started, then stopped, seeming at a loss for words. Insane? Yasmin supplied. Reckless? Possibly suicidal? Incredible, he finished quietly, turning to face her. His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You were incredible. For a moment, they just stared at each other in the dimly lit hallway, both processing what had just happened. Then footsteps echoed from the other end of the corridor. Security, probably, or family members, or both. Come on, Hyunwoo said, his grip on her hand tightening. We're not done yet. And as he pulled her deeper into the hotel's maze of corridors, Yasmin realized her 3 minutes were far from over. They ran through corridors lined with gold-embossed wallpaper, past startled hotel staff and confused guests, until Hyunwoo pulled Yasmin around a corner into a narrow hallway that glowed under soft amber wall sconces. Service stairs loomed at one end, an emergency exit at the other, escape routes or dead ends, depending on how fast security was moving. Hyunwoo released her hand only to slam his palm against the wall beside her head, caging her in. His other hand found hers again, fingers threading through hers with desperate intensity. Up close, Yasmin could see everything the controlled facade had hidden. The tremor in his shoulders, the way his chest heaved with each breath, the sheen of sweat at his temples despite the cool air. This wasn't the cold Mafia air everyone feared. This was a man barely holding himself together. I need to explain, he said, his voice rough. Before we go back out there, you need to know what you just walked into. I'm listening, Yasmin said, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded despite her racing pulse. Hyunwoo's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they held a vulnerability so raw it physically hurt to witness. That marriage wasn't just a wedding, it was a political alliance between the Lim and Park families. Our territories, our businesses, our entire operations were supposed to merge through that union. So you're actually, Yasmin started. A criminal, he finished flatly. The heir to an empire built on violence, extortion, and control. My father runs the largest organized crime network in Seoul. Ji-hyun's family controls the south. Together, we would have been unstoppable. Yasmin's mind spun. She'd suspected, of course, the whispers, the security, the way people looked at him with fear, but hearing it stated so plainly was different. And you don't want that. I want. He stopped, his jaw clenching. I don't know what I want anymore. I've spent my entire life being groomed for this. Every decision made for me. Every relationship calculated. Every moment of my life orchestrated by people who see me as a tool, not a person. His hand tightened around hers, and Yasmin could feel him trembling. If I marry Ji-hyun, I become exactly what they want me to be. A weapon, a pawn, a figurehead, with no soul left. And if you refuse? Yasmin asked quietly. War. The word fell between them like a stone. The Park family will see it as betrayal. My own family will see it as weakness. The entire criminal underworld is watching this moment, and my refusal to go through with the marriage destabilizes everything. Yasmin processed this, her back pressed against the wall, his body close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. She should be terrified. She should be running. Instead, she found herself asking the question that mattered most. What do you want, Hyunwoo? Not your family, not the parks. You. He looked at her like she'd asked him something in a foreign language. No one's ever asked me that before. I'm asking now. For a long moment, he just stared at her, his eyes searching hers for something: judgment, fear, pity. She didn't know. Then his forehead dropped to rest against the wall beside her head, his breath warm against her neck. I want to breathe, he whispered. I want to wake up in the morning and make a choice that's mine. I want to look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back at me. Yasmin's heart clenched. She lifted her free hand, hesitated, then placed it gently on his chest. Beneath her palm, his heart was racing just as fast as hers. Then why did you choose me? She asked. In that room full of powerful people, why grab the broke server in the cheap dress? Hyunwoo lifted his head to look at her, and something in his expression shifted, became softer, more honest. Because you looked free. You were sitting there with your headphones in, completely disconnected from all the posturing and politics. You looked like you existed in your own world, untouched by all the ugliness surrounding you. He reached up with his free hand, fingertips barely brushing her cheek. And when I walked up to you, when I invaded your space and made an insane request, you didn't look at me with fear or calculation. You looked at me like I was just a person who needed help. You are just a person who needs help, Yasmin said softly. Not to anyone else in that room. His voice cracked. To them, I'm the limb heir. I'm a business opportunity. I'm a threat to be managed or an asset to be acquired. But when you looked at me, I was just human, Yasmin finished. Yeah. The word came out like a confession. They stood there in the amber-lit hallway, breathing the same air, both hyper-aware of every point of contact between their bodies. Yasmin knew this was dangerous territory. This man was a criminal, part of a world that could destroy her without a second thought. His problems were so far beyond her ability to help that it was almost laughable. But the way he was looking at her like she was air and he'd been drowning made it impossible to walk away. How much time has passed? She asked. Hyunwoo glanced at his watch. About 20 minutes. Way over 3 minutes. Yeah. He didn't move away. Do you want to leave? I can get you out of here safely. No one will bother you again. I'll handle the fallout. Yasmin should say yes, should take the escape route he was offering and never look back. Instead, she heard herself asking, what happens if I stay? His breath hitched. If you stay, we go back out there and sell the lie. We make everyone believe that you're the woman I chose, that this relationship is real enough to break an alliance over. We convince my family and hers that I'm willing to burn everything down rather than give you up. And then you become a target. His voice went hard. Ji-hyun's family will come after you. They'll dig into your background, threaten your job, make your life hell. My own family won't be much better. They'll see you as the obstacle between me and my duty. That sounds absolutely terrifying, Yasmin said. It is. So why would I possibly agree to this? Hyunwoo's eyes searched hers, and she saw the question he couldn't quite ask, the desperate hope that she might choose to stay not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Yasmin thought about her life, the double shifts, the tiny apartment, the constant struggle to survive in a city that saw her as foreign, temporary, disposable. She thought about how no one had ever fought for her, chosen her, seen her as worth the cost of anything. And she thought about the man in front of her, trembling with the effort of holding himself together, asking her to be brave for just a little longer. 3 more minutes, she said finally. Relief crashed over his features. 3 more minutes? 3 more minutes to save your life, she confirmed. Then we reassess. His smile was small, fragile, but genuine. Thank you. Footsteps echoed from the main corridor, security getting closer. Hyunwoo straightened, his mask of composure sliding back into place with practiced ease. But his hand didn't leave hers. Ready? He asked. Yasmin took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and nodded. Let's go save your life. They stepped back into the chaos hand in hand, and the wedding hall erupted once again. But this time, Yasmin wasn't just playing a role. She was making a choice dangerous, reckless, possibly insane, but hers. And as Hyunwoo's arm wrapped protectively around her waist, pulling her close as they faced the furious families and flashing cameras together, Yasmin realized she'd just agreed to far more than 3 minutes. She'd agreed to war. The return to the wedding hall was like stepping into a war zone. Guests had divided into factions, some clustered around Ji-hyun, who stood near the altar like a white-clad general marshalling troops, while others formed tight circles of whispered conversation. Phones out, broadcasting the scandal in real time to whoever would listen. Hyunwoo's parents stood near the entrance to the main ballroom, flanked by men in dark suits whose stillness suggested violence held barely in check. His mother, elegant in deep purple silk, her hair swept into a perfect chignon, had the kind of beauty that felt like armor. His father was broader, harder, with eyes that assessed everything like a predator calculating trajectories. They watched Hyunwoo and Yasmin approach with expressions that promised consequences. "Keep your head up," Hyunwoo murmured against Yasmin's ear, his lips close enough to maintain the illusion of intimacy. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just follow my lead." "What's the lead?" Yasmin whispered back. "We're in love." His hand tightened on her waist. Desperately, completely, worth destroying everything in love. Before Yasmin could respond, a woman's voice cut through the ambient chaos. "There they are." Ji-hyun's mother, Mrs. Park, elegant and venomous, stepped forward with the kind of smile that preceded bloodshed. The happy couple. How touching. She stopped in front of them, her eyes fixed on Yasmin with the intensity of someone memorizing a target. "My daughter tells me you claim to have been seeing my future son-in-law for 6 months. How fascinating that no one in our extensive network has ever heard of you." "Maybe your network isn't as extensive as you think," Yasmin replied, keeping her voice level. "Or maybe Hyunwoo is better at keeping things private than you give him credit for." Mrs. Park's smile sharpened. "Privacy in our world is a luxury reserved for those who've earned the right to it. You." Her gaze swept over Yasmin's server apron. "Haven't earned anything. Except his heart," Yasmin shot back. "Which seems to be worth more than all your alliances combined." Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. Cameras swiveled to capture the confrontation. Hyunwoo's grip on Yasmin's waist became almost painfully tight. Whether in warning or support, she couldn't tell. "Hyunwoo." His mother's voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "Explain yourself. Now." He turned toward his parents with the kind of controlled grace that suggested years of practice navigating their expectations. "There's nothing to explain, Mother. I'm not marrying Ji-hyun. The engagement is over." "The engagement," his father said quietly, his voice somehow more terrifying for its softness, "was not yours to end." "Then perhaps you should have consulted me before arranging it," Hyunwoo replied with the same dangerous calm. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Yasmin could feel the shift, the way everyone nearby tensed, the way security guards' hands moved closer to concealed weapons. This wasn't just a family disagreement. This was mutiny. Ji-hyun herself finally pushed through the crowd, having composed herself into cold fury. "I want to hear it from you," she said, ignoring everyone else and focusing solely on Hyunwoo. "Look me in the eye and tell me you choose this nobody over everything we could have built together." Before Hyunwoo could respond, Yasmin felt something inside her snap. She'd been playing defense, reacting to attacks, following leads. But watching this woman dismiss her existence with such casual cruelty awakened something fierce. "My name is Yasmin Thomas," she said, stepping slightly forward so she stood between Hyunwoo and Ji-hyun. "I'm not a nobody. I'm a woman who works 2 jobs to survive in a city that wasn't built for people like me. I'm a daughter who sends money home to her mother every month. I'm a person with dreams and fears and a life that matters, even if it doesn't matter to you." She could feel Hyunwoo's surprise, feel the entire room's attention fixate on her, but she was done being dismissed. "You want to know why he chose me?" Yasmin continued, her voice rising. "Because I see him as a person, not a business opportunity. Because when he looks at me, he doesn't have to calculate angles or measure worth. Because for 6 months..." She committed to the lie completely now. "He's been able to breathe around me in a way he's never been able to breathe around you." Ji-hyun's face transformed into something ugly. "You think you can just walk into our world and..." "I didn't walk into your world," Yasmin interrupted. "He ran out of it toward me. Maybe the question isn't why he chose me. Maybe it's why he was so desperate to escape you." The slap came so fast Yasmin barely saw it coming. Ji-hyun's palm connected with her cheek with enough force to snap her head sideways, the crack echoing across the suddenly silent hall. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The stinging pain, the shocked gasps, the camera flashes exploding like lightning. Then Hyunwoo moved. He stepped between them faster than Yasmin thought possible, his body forming a barrier, one hand reaching back to touch her cheek while his eyes fixed on Ji-hyun with something absolutely lethal. "Touch her again," he said quietly, his voice dropping to a register that made grown men step backward. "And there will be consequences you can't even imagine." Ji-hyun's eyes widened not with fear, but with something like shocked recognition. This was a side of Hyunwoo she'd clearly never seen, a side no one had ever seen. You're choosing her? Ji-hyun breathed. Actually choosing her? Yes. The single word carried the weight of a declaration of war. Security from both families began moving forward. Yasmin could see men positioning themselves strategically, hands moving to weapons concealed beneath expensive suits. The air itself seemed to vibrate with potential violence. Hyun-woo Lim, his father's voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. You will come with us. Now. Before you embarrass this family further. No, Hyun-woo replied, not moving from his protective stance in front of Yasmin. I'm leaving with Yasmin. Anyone who tries to stop us answers to me directly. His mother laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. You think because you've had some private rebellion, you can just walk away from your responsibilities? From your family? From everything we've built? I think, Hyun-woo said carefully, that for the first time in my life, I'm making a choice that's mine. And if that means walking away from everything else, then yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yasmin's hand found his, threading their fingers together. She could feel him shaking not with fear, but with the monumental effort of defying decades of control. Security, Mrs. Park commanded. Detain the girl. We'll sort this out once she's away from my future son-in-law. 4 men in suits moved toward Yasmin. She tensed, preparing to fight or run or both, but Hyun-woo shifted his stance, positioning himself more completely between her and the approaching security. Anyone who touches her, he said, his voice carrying across the entire hall, will be considered a personal enemy, and you all know what I do to my enemies. The security guards stopped. Yasmin could see them exchanging uncertain glances, weighing orders against self-preservation. This is your last chance, his father said. Choose the family and the alliance, or choose exile. But know that if you walk out that door with her, you won't be welcomed back. Hyun-woo turned to look at Yasmin, his eyes searching hers for something: permission, courage, confirmation that she was still with him. She squeezed his hand, nodded once, and watched relief flood his features. He turned back to his parents. Then I choose exile. The hall erupted. Shouts in Korean and English overlapped. Ji-hyun screamed something about betrayal. Mrs. Park demanded security take action. Reporters pressed forward, microphones extended, capturing every second of the scandal. And through it all, Hyun-woo kept Yasmin's hand locked in his, pulling her toward the exit as chaos swirled around them. They burst through the main doors into the hotel lobby, security still shouting behind them, and Hyun-woo didn't stop moving until they'd reached a service elevator that required a key card he somehow had access to. The doors closed on the chaos, and suddenly they were alone in silence, so complete Yasmin's ears rang. She touched her cheek where Ji-hyun had struck her, feeling the tender heat of the slap. That was, I'm sorry, Hyun-woo said immediately, his face twisted with guilt. God, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have been hit. You shouldn't have been dragged into this. I walked into it willingly, Yasmin reminded him. Well, I agreed to 3 minutes willingly. The rest kind of spiraled. A sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sob. 3 minutes. Right. This is way past 3 minutes. Yeah. Yasmin met his eyes. So what happens now? The elevator stopped at an underground parking level. Hyun-woo led her through concrete corridors to a sleek black car, a Maybach, Yasmin noted. Because, of course it was. Now, he said, opening the passenger door for her. I get you somewhere safe before my family or hers comes up with a plan to remove you from the equation permanently. Yasmin slid into the leather seat, her mind racing. Remove me from the equation. That's a nice way of saying, kill you, threaten you, or make you disappear. Hyun-woo confirmed grimly as he started the engine. Welcome to my world. As they pulled out of the parking garage into Seoul's neon-lit streets, Yasmin realized she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She'd stepped into a war between criminal dynasties, put herself in the crosshairs of the city's most dangerous families, and tied herself to a man who was now a target himself. And somehow, looking at his profile as he drove, jaw tight but eyes clear for the first time all evening, she couldn't quite bring herself to regret it. I wish I could tell you things calmed down after this. I really do. But if you want to see how far this fake relationship goes, you need to subscribe because what happens in the next chapter changes everything. Speaking of which, Hyun-woo drove like he knew every back alley and service road in Seoul, which, Yasmin realized, he probably did. They wound through Gangnam's gleaming towers, then down into older neighborhoods where neon signs advertised Pojangmacha and Noraebang, finally emerging in an industrial district where warehouses loomed like sleeping giants. He parked behind a building that looked abandoned but probably wasn't, killed the engine, and sat for a moment with his hands still gripping the steering wheel. "I need to make some calls," he said finally. "Get you protection. A safe place to stay until I can figure out how bad this is going to get." "How bad is it going to get?" Yasmin asked. He turned to look at her, and in the dim light from distant street lamps, his face looked haunted. "Worst case? Both families put prices on your head to force me back in line. Best case? They target your job, your housing, your ability to survive in Seoul until you leave voluntarily. Those are both terrible options." "Yeah." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't think this through. I just knew I couldn't walk down that aisle. And you were there, and you looked at me like I was worth saving." Yasmin studied his profile. "You keep saying that I looked at you differently, but I'm starting to think you're the one who saw something different." "What do you mean?" "I mean you chose me," Yasmin said slowly, working through the thought as she spoke. "Not just because I was there, not just because I looked available or disconnected or whatever. You chose me specifically because you saw something in my face that made you think I'd say yes." Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. "You looked fearless," he admitted, "even though you were alone in a room full of people who weren't your people, wearing a server's uniform in a ballroom full of designer gowns. You looked completely unbothered, like you knew exactly who you were and didn't need anyone else's validation." "I was hiding," Yasmin said, "and I definitely wasn't fearless. I was exhausted and broke and counting down the hours until I could go home. But you said yes anyway." His eyes found hers. "When I asked you to help a complete stranger ruin a Mafia wedding, you looked at my face for maybe 10 seconds and said yes. That's not hiding. That's courage." Yasmin laughed, but the sound was shaky. "Or stupidity. Maybe both." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "But I'm grateful for it. For you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened settling between them. Then Yasmin noticed a thin line of blood on Hyun-woo's hand, a small cut, probably from when he'd slammed his palm against the wall earlier. "You're bleeding," she said. He glanced down, shrugged. "It's nothing. Nothing is still something." Yasmin opened the glove compartment, hoping for tissues or napkins, and found instead a first aid kit because of course a man who lived in constant danger kept emergency medical supplies in his car. "Give me your hand," she said. Hyun-woo hesitated, then extended his hand palm up. Yasmin opened an alcohol wipe packet and gently cleaned the cut. He winced but didn't pull away. "You don't have to take care of me," he said quietly. "I know." Yasmin applied an antiseptic gel, her fingers gentle on his skin. "But you jumped in front of me when Ji-hyun's security tried to grab me. You stood between me and your own family. Least I can do is patch up a cut." His eyes were intense on her face. "You realize what we're doing is insane, right? We've known each other for less than an hour. You should be running as far from me as possible." "Probably." Yasmin pressed a small bandage over the cut, but didn't release his hand. "But here's the thing I've been thinking about. My whole life, I've played it safe, worked hard, kept my head down, didn't make waves. And where has it gotten me? 2 jobs, a studio apartment I can barely afford, and a life that looks exactly like survival but nothing like living." She met his eyes. "You asked me for 3 minutes of courage, and maybe I needed those 3 minutes just as much as you did." Hyun-woo turned his hand in hers so their fingers could interlock properly. "What if I need more than 3 minutes? Then we reassess," Yasmin said. "Figure out what comes next, together." The word hung between them together, carrying implications neither of them were quite ready to examine. A phone buzzed. Hyun-woo pulled out a sleek device, glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. "We need to move. My family's tracking my car." "Of course they are," Yasmin muttered. They abandoned the Maybach and moved on foot through the industrial district, Hyun-woo leading them with the confidence of someone who'd mapped every escape route in the city. They reached a storage facility, and he used a key code to access a unit on the 3rd floor. Inside was sparse but functional camping cots, bottled water, non-perishable food, and several locked cases that Yasmin strongly suspected contained weapons. "How many of these safe houses do you have?" she asked. "Enough." He checked his phone again, typed out a message. "I'm calling in some favors. People who owe me, who won't report back to my family, but it's going to take time to set up proper protection for you. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we stay here." He gestured to the space. "It's not luxurious, but it's secure. No one knows about this location except me." Yasmin sat on one of the cots, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep fatigue and the beginnings of a headache from the slap she'd received. Hyun-woo noticed immediately. He crouched in front of her, reaching up to gently examine her cheek, where Ji-hyun had struck her. "There's going to be a bruise." "Badge of honor," Yasmin joked weakly. "This is my fault." His voice was rough. "You got hurt because of me." "I got hurt because Ji-hyun hit me," Yasmin corrected. "Don't take credit for other people's violence." He smiled slightly at that, but guilt still shadowed his features. "Why did you do it? Step between me and her like that? You could have stayed quiet. Let me handle it." "Because she was talking to you like you were property," Yasmin said simply. "Like you were something she owned. And I couldn't just stand there and watch that." Hyun-woo's hand moved from her cheek to cup her face gently, his thumb tracing careful patterns across her skin. "You're extraordinary. Do you know that?" Yasmin's breath caught. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from him, could smell the expensive cologne, and underneath it, something uniquely him. "I'm really not," she whispered. "I'm just a girl who said yes when she probably should have said no." "Thank God you said yes." His forehead rested against hers, and they breathed the same air for a long moment. Then his phone buzzed again, shattering the intimacy. He pulled back, checking the message, and whatever he saw made his jaw tighten. "What?" Yasmin asked. "They're coming after you," he said quietly. "Both families. They've put out the word, 'Find the Jamaican woman who ruined the wedding.' They want your name, your address, everything." Yasmin's stomach dropped. "How long do I have?" "Not long." He stood, pacing the small space. "I can protect you, but it means you can't go back to your apartment, can't go to your jobs, can't contact anyone who might lead them to you. So I just disappear," Yasmin said flatly. "Give up my entire life because I helped you." "I know." He stopped pacing, turned to face her. "I know what I'm asking, and if you want out, I'll get you out. I'll pay for you to leave Seoul, start somewhere new with enough money to—" "Stop," Yasmin interrupted. "Just stop." She stood, walked over to him, and looked up into his face. "I said I was in for 3 minutes, then I said 3 more minutes. And I keep extending that deadline because every time I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for." His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite their size. "You shouldn't have to fight for me. You don't even know me." "Then tell me," Yasmin challenged. "Right now. Who is Hyun-woo Lim when he's not being the Mafia heir everyone expects him to be?" He stared at her for a long moment, then began to speak, his voice low and honest in the dimly lit storage unit. "I'm a man who's never made a decision that was truly mine. I'm someone who collects art because it's the only thing I've been allowed to care about without it being calculated. I'm the son who suffocated under expectations for so long I forgot what it felt like to breathe." He paused, swallowed hard. "And I'm the person who, when I saw you sitting alone in that wedding hall, thought maybe, just maybe, you could teach me what freedom looks like." Yasmin's heart clenched. "That's a lot of pressure to put on a stranger." "I know." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. "And I'm sorry for that too. But you asked who I am, and that's the truth. I'm a desperate man who saw something in you that gave me hope." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, Seoul continuing its chaotic existence while they stood in a bubble of stolen time. Yasmin knew she should be more afraid, should demand he get her out of the city immediately, should run from this beautiful, broken man and his dangerous world. Instead, she reached up and placed her hands over his. "Okay, okay, okay, we do this. But no more apologizing, and no more treating me like I'm fragile. If we're going to survive this, I need you to see me as an equal, not a victim you're rescuing." Something shifted in his expression: surprise, respect, and something deeper that made Yasmin's breath catch. "Partners?" he asked. "Partners," she confirmed. His smile was small but genuine. "Then let's figure out how to survive the next 24 hours. As they began planning, Yasmin realized she'd just committed to something far beyond 3 minutes. She'd signed up for a war, tied herself to a fugitive from the criminal underworld, and put her entire life on pause for a man she barely knew. And somehow, with his hand in hers and determination in his eyes, it felt like the most honest choice she'd ever made. At this point, Yasmin and Hyun-woo have gone from strangers to partners in just a few hours. If you're as invested in their story as I am, make sure you're subscribed because what happens next when the families strike back is going to change everything. Now, let's see just how far they're willing to go for each other. 2 days. That's how long Hyun-woo managed to keep Yasmin hidden before the walls started closing in. They'd moved through 3 different safe houses, the storage unit, then a small apartment in Mapo that belonged to someone who owed Hyunwoo a favor, and finally to a modest hotel in Itaewon where Hyunwoo paid cash and used a false name. Each location felt increasingly temporary, like the whole city was shrinking around them. Yasmin watched the news on her phone. The wedding scandal had exploded across social media and entertainment outlets. Grainy photos of her and Hyunwoo had been splashed across gossip sites with headlines like, "Mystery Woman Destroys Seoul's Wedding of the Century," and "Mafia Heir Chooses Love Over Alliance." The comments ranged from romantic to vicious. Some people thought she was brave. Others called her a homewrecker, a gold digger, a foreigner who didn't understand Korean culture. Her face was everywhere, and it made her skin crawl. "We can't hide forever," Yasmin said, watching Hyunwoo pace the hotel room like a caged animal. He'd been on his phone constantly, calling in favors, making arrangements, trying to build a protection network around her. "I know." He stopped pacing long enough to look at her. His suit from the wedding was gone, replaced with dark jeans and a black shirt that made him look younger, less like a crime lord and more like the person he might have been in another life. "I'm working on getting you out of Seoul. Japan, maybe, or—" "I'm not leaving." He stared at her. "Yasmin. They know your name now. They know you're Jamaican, that you worked at the Lux Gold Hotel. They're interviewing your coworkers, finding your address. My sources say both families have people looking for you. So we fight back," Yasmin said. "We don't run." "Fight back how? You're one person. They're two of the most powerful criminal organizations in Korea." Yasmin stood, walked over to him. "Then we make them regret targeting me. We use the media attention, the public interest. They can't disappear me if everyone's watching." Hyunwoo looked at her like she'd suggested they walk into a lion's den naked. "That's incredibly dangerous." "Everything about this situation is dangerous." Yasmin crossed her arms. "At least if we're visible. We're harder to make quietly disappear." Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening, then answered in Korean. Yasmin watched his face as he listened, watched the way his jaw tightened and his free hand clenched into a fist. He ended the call, looked at Yasmin, and said quietly, "They went to your apartment." The bottom dropped out of Yasmin's stomach. "My apartment? When?" "Yesterday. Ji-hyun's people. They questioned your neighbors, searched the place. My contact says they took photos, went through your belongings." Yasmin felt violated in a way that made her want to scream. "They can't just—" "They can," Hyunwoo said grimly. "And they did. But that's not the worst part." "There's a worse part?" "They also contacted your employer, told them you were involved in industrial espionage, that you'd used your position at the hotel to gather information on high-profile guests. The hotel fired you immediately to avoid scandal." Yasmin's legs gave out. She sat heavily on the bed, processing this. "So I'm unemployed. Great. What about my other job?" Hyunwoo's silence was answer enough. "Both jobs," Yasmin said flatly. "They took both my jobs. I'm sorry." He crouched in front of her, hands on her knees. "I'll pay you. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Whatever you need." "I don't want your money," Yasmin snapped, then immediately felt guilty because none of this was his fault. She softened her voice. "I don't want to be kept. I want my life back." "I know." His hands tightened on her knees. "And I'm going to fix this. I promise." A sharp knock on the hotel room door made them both freeze. Hyunwoo stood immediately, positioning himself between Yasmin and the door, one hand moving to the small of his back where Yasmin now knew he kept a gun. "Room service," a voice called in, accented English. "We didn't order anything," Hyunwoo called back. "Complimentary champagne, sir." From management. Hyunwoo and Yasmin exchanged glances. He moved toward the door with lethal grace, checked the peephole, then slowly opened it with the chain still engaged. A young hotel employee stood in the hallway with a champagne bucket, but behind him, leaning casually against the opposite wall, was a woman Yasmin recognized from the wedding, one of Ji-hyun's cousins. Hyunwoo slammed the door, threw the deadbolt. "We're leaving, now." They grabbed what little they had, Yasmin's purse, Hyunwoo's laptop bag, and moved toward the window. Fire escape. Yasmin had spent enough time in cheap apartments to appreciate an emergency exit. They were halfway down the metal stairs when Yasmin heard car doors slamming below. Black sedans had pulled up, and men in suits were emerging with the kind of coordinated precision that suggested military training. "Up," Hyunwoo said, reversing direction. They climbed to the roof. Seoul spread out around them in every direction, neon signs, high rises, the dark snake of the Han River in the distance. It was beautiful and completely unhelpful. "Now what?" Yasmin asked, breathing hard. Hyunwoo was already on his phone. I'm calling in my last favor. Someone who owes me enough that they'll risk both families' anger. He spoke rapidly in Korean, his voice urgent. When he hung up, he grabbed Yasmin's hand. Helicopter, 5 minutes. But we have to make it to the adjacent building's roof. Helicopter? Yasmin stared at him. You have access to a helicopter? I have access to people with helicopters, he corrected. Big difference. They ran across the rooftop, jumped a 3-foot gap to the next building, and kept moving. Behind them, Yasmin could hear doors banging open, shouts in Korean. The men from below had reached the roof. The helicopter appeared like something out of an action movie, sleek, black, descending onto the roof of a commercial building 2 blocks away. Hyunwoo pulled Yasmin along, both of them running flat out. They were almost there when a voice called out behind them. Hyunwoo! He stopped, turned. Yasmin followed his gaze to see an older man standing on the roof they'd just left Hyunwoo's father, flanked by 4 bodyguards. Even from a distance, Yasmin could see the resemblance. Same sharp features, same commanding presence. But where Hyunwoo's face held hope and fear in equal measure, his father's held only cold calculation. Last chance, son. Mr. Lim called across the gap between buildings. Come home. We'll deal with the park situation. Everything can be managed. Except my life. Hyunwoo called back. That can't be managed. Not anymore. You're choosing exile for a woman you met 3 days ago? I'm choosing freedom, Hyunwoo corrected. She's just the first person who ever made me realize what freedom could look like. His father's expression didn't change. Then you're no longer my son. The words hung in the air between them, final as a death sentence. Hyunwoo's hand tightened around Yasmin's. I know. They turned and ran for the helicopter. The pilot kept the rotors spinning as they climbed aboard, and within seconds they were lifting off. Yasmin watched Seoul recede below them, watched Hyunwoo's father standing motionless on the rooftop, and wondered what they'd just committed to. Hyunwoo put his arms around her as the helicopter banked toward the outskirts of the city. I'm sorry, he said again, his voice barely audible over the rotor noise. Stop apologizing, Yasmin replied. We're in this together, remember? But as Seoul's lights blurred beneath them and the reality of their situation settled in, unemployed, hunted, cut off from everything familiar, Yasmin couldn't help but wonder if 3 minutes of courage was about to cost them everything. The helicopter landed at a private airstrip 40 minutes outside Seoul. Hyunwoo led Yasmin to a small house on the edge of the property, explained it belonged to the pilot's brother, and that they'd be safe there for at least a few days while he figured out the next move. What is the next move? Yasmin asked, sinking onto a worn couch that had seen better decades. Hyunwoo sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Honestly, I don't know. I've never been in a position where I couldn't negotiate my way out. Because you've never been in a position where you weren't representing your family's power, Yasmin said. Yeah. He leaned back, closed his eyes. I've been the Lim heir for so long, I don't know how to be just Hyunwoo. Yasmin reached over and took his hand. Then we figure it out together. Just Hyunwoo and just Yasmin, trying to survive. He opened his eyes, looked at her with such raw emotion that her breath caught. I choose you, he said quietly. I want you to know that. Not because you're convenient or because you were there. I choose you because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human. That's a lot of weight to put on a fake girlfriend, Yasmin tried to joke, but her voice shook. You're not fake anymore. His free hand came up to cup her face. You stopped being fake the moment you stepped between me and Ji-hyun. The moment you chose to stay instead of run. The moment you... His phone buzzed. They both stared at it like it was a bomb. He checked the screen, his expression going carefully blank. It's from Ji-hyun. What does it say? She wants to meet. Says she has information about her family's plans for you. Says if I don't show up, innocent people will get hurt. It's a trap, Yasmin said immediately. Probably. Hyunwoo was already standing, though, already moving toward the door. But I can't risk it. If there's even a chance. Then I'm coming with you, Yasmin said. Absolutely not. We're partners, remember? She stood, crossed her arms. You don't get to protect me by walking into danger alone. They stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, Hyunwoo sighed. You're going to get me killed. Or save your life, Yasmin countered. Again, despite everything, he smiled. Fair point. As they prepared to walk back into the fire, Yasmin realized something crucial. She was no longer the scared server who'd agreed to 3 minutes of pretending. She was a woman who'd chosen to stand beside someone against impossible odds, and she wasn't backing down now. The meeting location Ji-hyun chose was deliberately insulting. a luxury cafe in Cheongdam-dong, heart of Seoul's wealthiest neighborhood, where old money and new money competed to see who could spend more on a single cup of coffee. The kind of place Yasmin would never have entered before the wedding, where her presence would have been questioned by staff before she even sat down. Now, walking in beside Hyun-woo, she felt the weight of every eye in the room. Ji-hyun sat at a corner table, positioned so she could see the entire cafe. She'd traded her wedding hanbok for an immaculate white Chanel suit that probably cost more than Yasmin's entire year's salary from both jobs. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfect, and her expression held the kind of cold satisfaction that promised pain. 2 bodyguards flanked her table. Hyun-woo had brought none. "You came," Ji-hyun said as they approached. She gestured to the empty chairs across from her. "And you brought your little project. How quaint." "Say what you have to say," Hyun-woo replied, not sitting. "Then we're leaving." So hostile. Ji-hyun sipped her coffee with deliberate slowness. "And after I went through so much trouble to gather information that might save your girlfriend's life." Yasmin felt Hyun-woo tense beside her. "What information?" "Sit first." It wasn't a request. They sat. Yasmin kept her hands in her lap, trying to project calm she absolutely didn't feel. Ji-hyun pulled a manila folder from her designer bag and slid it across the table. Hyun-woo opened it, his expression darkening as he flipped through the contents. Yasmin caught glimpses. Photos of her apartment building, copies of her work visa, her employment records, her bank statements, her entire life, documented and analyzed. "Your girlfriend," Ji-hyun said, addressing Hyun-woo as if Yasmin wasn't sitting right there, "is here on a work visa that expires in 4 months. Interesting that she didn't mention that, don't you think?" Yasmin's stomach clenched. She'd been trying not to think about her visa situation, the precariousness of her legal status in Korea. "What does her visa have to do with anything?" Hyun-woo asked, his voice dangerous. "Everything." Ji-hyun leaned forward. "See, my family has connections in immigration. 1 phone call, and her visa gets revoked for suspicious activity. She'll be deported within 48 hours. And she'll be banned from re-entering Korea for 5 years minimum." The threat hung in the air between them. "You wouldn't," Yasmin said, finding her voice. Ji-hyun's eyes finally focused on her, and the hatred there was breathtaking. "I would. In fact, I already started the process. Unless," she turned back to Hyun-woo, "you end this ridiculous rebellion and honor your commitment to our families." "So you're blackmailing me," Hyun-woo said flatly. "I'm offering you a solution." Ji-hyun's smile was razor-sharp. "You go through with the marriage. I call off the immigration investigation. Your little friend gets to stay in Korea, keep whatever life she's built here. Everyone wins. Except me," Hyun-woo said. "You're the heir to a criminal empire." Ji-hyun's voice went hard. "You don't get to prioritize your feelings over your responsibilities." Yasmin watched Hyun-woo's profile, saw the muscle ticking in his jaw, the way his hands clenched on the table. This was the moment, she realized, the point where he had to choose between saving her and saving himself. "No," he said quietly. Ji-hyun blinked. "No? No deal." Hyun-woo stood, pulling Yasmin up with him. "You want to deport her? Go ahead. We'll leave Korea together. You want to threaten her life? I'll make sure she's protected. You want me to come crawling back? Never going to happen." Ji-hyun's careful composure cracked. "You would give up everything, your family, your inheritance, your entire life for a woman you barely know?" "Yes," Hyun-woo said simply, "because she's the first person who ever made me feel like I was worth more than my name." Yasmin's heart clenched painfully. Ji-hyun stood slowly, her chair scraping back. "Then you've made your choice, and you'll live with the consequences." She snapped her fingers, and the bodyguards moved forward, not attacking, just positioning themselves threateningly. Hyun-woo shifted to put himself between them and Yasmin, and she saw the subtle movement of his hand toward his concealed weapon. "We're leaving," Hyun-woo said. "Don't follow us." "Oh, we won't need to follow you," Ji-hyun replied. "You have nowhere to go. Your family has disowned you. Your resources are cut off. You're just a man with a gun and a woman who's about to lose her visa." She stepped closer, and Yasmin could smell her perfume, expensive, suffocating. "I want you to remember this moment. When she's deported and you're alone, when you realize what you gave up for 3 minutes of rebellion, I want you to remember that I offered you a way out. And I want you to remember," Yasmin said, finding her voice, "that I'm standing right here. I can hear you talking about me like I'm a bargaining chip instead of a person. I can see you treating Hyun-woo like he's property instead of someone with agency." Ji-hyun's eyes snapped to her. "You think your opinion matters?" "I think it matters to him," Yasmin gestured to Hyun-woo. "And that's clearly killing you." The slap came faster this time, Ji-hyun's palm connecting with Yasmin's other cheek with enough force to make her eyes water. Déjà vu. Except this time there were no cameras, no crowd, just the three of them and the bodyguards in a cafe that had gone silent. Hyun-woo's gun was out instantly, pressed against Ji-hyun's ribs before anyone else could move. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Touch her again and consequences don't begin to cover what I'll do to you." The cafe erupted. Patrons screamed. Staff ducked behind counters. The bodyguards pulled their own weapons, creating a Mexican standoff that could turn into a bloodbath in seconds. Ji-hyun, credit to her, barely flinched. "You're making this worse." "No," Hyun-woo said. "I'm ending it." He backed toward the exit, gun still trained on Ji-hyun, his other hand gripping Yasmin's. They made it to the door, through it, and ran. Behind them, Ji-hyun's voice carried through the street. "You can't run forever." But as they disappeared into Seoul's crowded sidewalks, Yasmin realized something. They didn't need forever. They just needed long enough to figure out how to survive. 3 days later, Yasmin received the notification. Her visa was under review for immediate revocation. Immigration wanted her to report to their offices within 24 hours. "I'm not going," she told Hyun-woo. They were hiding in yet another safe house. This one, a small studio in Hongdae that belonged to one of Hyun-woo's college friends who owed him a favor. "If you don't go, they'll issue a warrant," Hyun-woo said. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept properly in days, which he probably hadn't. "Then they issue a warrant. I'm not leaving you to face this alone." He crossed the small space, cupped her face in his hands. Both cheeks still bore faint bruises from Ji-hyun's slaps. "Yasmin, you can't throw away your life for me." "I'm not throwing it away." She covered his hands with hers. "I'm choosing you. The way you chose me. I chose you because I was desperate and selfish, and you chose me because you saw something worth fighting for," Yasmin interrupted. "And I see the same thing in you." They stood like that, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, while the deadline ticked closer. Finally, Hyun-woo spoke. "Then we do this together, all the way, no matter where it leads." "Together," Yasmin agreed. Outside, Seoul continued its chaotic existence, unaware that two people were preparing for the fight of their lives. But inside that tiny studio, with their hands clasped and their resolve hardening, Yasmin and Hyun-woo became something more than partners. They became each other's only certainty in an increasingly uncertain world. The summit was called for a Thursday afternoon at the Shilla Hotel, neutral ground where both the Lim and Park families could meet, without it being seen as one side gaining advantage over the other. The ostensible purpose was damage control after the wedding scandal. The real purpose was to force Hyun-woo back in line. He'd received the summons from his father. "Come alone. Face the consequences of your choices. Show respect to the families you've disrespected." Instead, Hyun-woo showed up with Yasmin. They walked through the hotel lobby like they owned it. Yasmin in a borrowed dress that actually fit her properly for once, deep emerald that made her skin glow, and Hyun-woo in a sharp suit that reminded everyone exactly whose son he was, even if that son was currently in rebellion. The conference room was full of terrifying people. Hyun-woo's parents sat at the head of an expensive table, flanked by the family's council of elders, men and women whose combined body count probably reached triple digits. The Park family occupied the other end, including Ji-hyun and her parents, all of them radiating cold fury. Between them sat mediators, respected figures in Seoul's underworld, people whose job was to prevent full-scale war when families had disagreements. Everyone looked up as Hyun-woo and Yasmin entered. "You were told to come alone," Hyun-woo's father said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made entire rooms go silent. "I was told to face consequences," Hyun-woo corrected. "Yasmin is part of those consequences, so she's here." Mrs. Park stood slowly. "You think you can bring that woman into a family summit? Show us such disrespect?" "I think," Hyun-woo said, guiding Yasmin to 2 empty chairs at the side of the table, "that we have things to discuss, and lying about Yasmin's role in my life would be more disrespectful than acknowledging the truth." They sat. Yasmin kept her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap, trying to project confidence she didn't remotely feel. Every person in this room could end her life with a phone call. The weight of that reality pressed down on her shoulders like physical force. "Very well." One of the mediators, an older woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen everything, gestured for everyone to sit. "Let's begin." What followed was an hour of discussion that felt like being slowly flayed alive. The families presented their case. Hyun-woo had dishonored an agreement years in the making. He'd embarrassed both families publicly. He'd chosen personal desire over familial duty. He destabilized carefully balanced power structures in Seoul's criminal underground. The solution is simple, Mr. Park said. He was a broad man with a scar across his left cheek, and the kind of presence that suggested violence was always an option. Hyunwoo marries my daughter as planned. The alliance proceeds. This woman, he gestured dismissively at Yasmin, is compensated for her trouble and sent back to wherever she came from. Jamaica, Yasmin said quietly. I came from Jamaica. Every eye turned to her. She hadn't been invited to speak, but she was done being discussed like an object. You speak without permission, Mrs. Lim said coldly. I speak because I'm tired of being talked about like I'm not in the room. Yasmin replied, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. You want to send me away, pay me off, make me disappear so you can go back to treating Hyunwoo like a bargaining chip instead of a person. You have no standing here, Mr. Park said. No voice in matters that don't concern you. These matters concern me, Yasmin shot back. Because you're discussing my deportation, my life, my future like it's a minor inconvenience in your business deal. It is a minor inconvenience, Ji-hyun said, speaking for the first time. She looked immaculate as always, her expression carefully controlled. You're a temporary problem. Once you're gone, Hyunwoo will see reason. I am reason, Hyunwoo said, his voice cutting through the tension. Yasmin is the first clear decision I've made in my entire life. His father's fist came down on the table hard enough to make everyone jump. You call destroying an alliance a clear decision? You call throwing away your inheritance for a woman you've known less than a week a clear decision? Yes. Hyunwoo stood, and Yasmin saw him fully inhabit his power for the first time. Not the desperate man who'd begged her for help, but the heir who commanded respect through sheer presence. Because every other decision in my life has been made for me. By you, by this family, by expectations I never agreed to. You don't get to agree, his mother said. You were born into this family. Your duty was decided the day you were born. Then I'm rejecting that duty. Hyunwoo's voice was calm but absolute. I'm rejecting the marriage. I'm rejecting the alliance. I'm rejecting a future where I'm nothing but a tool for other people's ambitions. The room exploded into argument. Council members shouted in Korean. The Parks demanded consequences. The mediators tried to restore order. And through it all, Hyunwoo stood firm, his eyes never leaving his father's face. Finally, the elder Lim stood. The room went silent immediately. You would choose exile over family? He asked. If family means suffocation, Hyunwoo replied. Then yes. Then you are no longer my son. No longer the Lim heir. Your accounts are frozen. Your position in the organization terminated. Your name stripped from all family holdings. His voice held no emotion, just cold finality. You have until midnight to remove yourself and your woman from any property associated with our family. Yasmin felt Hyunwoo flinch beside her, but his voice remained steady. Understood. Furthermore, Mrs. Park stood now, her voice venomous. If we see either of you in Seoul after tomorrow, we will consider it a personal insult, and we respond to insults with appropriate force. The threat was clear. Leave the city or die. Hyunwoo nodded once. Then we'll leave. He turned to go, reaching for Yasmin's hand, but Ji-hyun's voice stopped them. Hyunwoo. He turned back. Ji-hyun's composure finally cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Was I really that terrible? Was the idea of marrying me so unbearable that you'd give up everything? For the first time, Hyunwoo's expression softened. No, Ji-hyun, you weren't terrible, but we would have been. Together, we would have been two people trapped in a contract, resenting each other more with each passing year. You deserve better than that. I deserve the alliance I was promised, she shot back. You deserve someone who chooses you because they want to, not because they have to, Hyunwoo said. And so do I. He squeezed Yasmin's hand, and they walked out together. In the elevator down, Yasmin finally allowed herself to shake. Did that really just happen? Did you actually choose you over everything? Hyunwoo finished. Yeah, I did. Your family disowned me. I heard. Your inheritance. Gone. Hyunwoo. Yasmin turned to face him, saw the devastation he was trying to hide. You just lost everything. He cupped her face in his hands, and his smile was small but genuine. No. I lost everything that was suffocating me. What I have left. He looked at her with such intensity it stole her breath. Is the first thing I've ever chosen for myself. What if it's not enough? Yasmin whispered. What if I'm not enough? You were worth choosing the moment you looked me in the eyes and didn't flinch, Hyunwoo said. Everything else is just details. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, where reporters and photographers had somehow learned about the summit, Cameras exploded in flashes as they emerged. Questions shouted in Korean and English overlapping into chaos. Hyun-woo put his arm around Yasmin's shoulders, and instead of hiding, instead of running, he turned to face the cameras. "I have a statement," he said, and his voice carried enough authority that the crowd quieted. "My name is Hyun-woo Lim. I am no longer the heir to the Lim family organization. As of today, I'm simply a man who made a choice." He pulled Yasmin closer. "This is Yasmin Thomas. She's the woman I choose. Not because it was arranged, not because it benefits anyone else, but because for the first time in my life, I looked at someone and saw a future I actually wanted." The reporters exploded with questions, but Hyun-woo ignored them, guiding Yasmin through the crowd and out into Seoul's afternoon sunlight. "Where do we go now?" Yasmin asked once they were in a taxi heading away from the hotel. "I have some money they don't know about," Hyun-woo said. "Accounts my father never had access to. It's not much compared to the family wealth, but it's enough to start over somewhere new." "Somewhere new," Yasmin repeated. "Like where?" He looked at her, and despite everything, the loss, the danger, the uncertainty, he smiled. "Anywhere you want. We have the whole world to choose from." Yasmin laughed, the sound half hysterical. "A week ago I was worried about making rent. Now I'm leaving the country with a former crime lord heir. This is insane." "Completely insane," Hyun-woo agreed. "But I meant what I said in there. You're the only clear decision I've ever made." As Seoul passed by the taxi windows, the city that had been both their prison and their battlefield, Yasmin realized they were about to step into something entirely unknown. No family backing, no guaranteed income, no safety net. Just two people who'd chosen each other against impossible odds. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's do this. Together." "Together," Hyun-woo agreed, threading his fingers through hers. And as the taxi merged into traffic, carrying them away from everything they'd known, they had no idea that the biggest challenge was still ahead, because walking away from a criminal empire wasn't as simple as just leaving. Some wars followed you wherever you ran. They didn't leave Seoul immediately. Hyun-woo insisted on one more appearance, a press conference at the same luxury hotel where the wedding had imploded, where both families and half of Seoul's media had gathered to watch the official resolution of the scandal. "This is suicide," Yasmin said for the 10th time as they prepared in a hotel room Hyun-woo had rented under a false name. "Both families want us gone. Walking back in there is asking to get killed." "Maybe," Hyun-woo admitted, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "But I need to do this. I need to make a public statement so clear that neither family can twist the narrative after we're gone." "A public statement that you chose me," Yasmin said. "A public statement that I chose myself," he corrected. "And that you're part of that choice, yes." Yasmin looked at her reflection. The borrowed emerald dress from the summit, her hair styled simply, minimal makeup that couldn't hide the fading bruises on her cheeks. She looked like someone who'd been through battle, which, she supposed, she had. "What if I can't do this?" she asked quietly. "What if I get up there and freeze?" Hyun-woo came up behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. In the mirror, they looked like two people who'd been through war together, exhausted, bruised, but unbroken. "Then I'll speak for both of us," he said. "But I don't think you'll freeze. You've been facing down criminals and crime families for a week without flinching. A press conference is nothing compared to what you've already survived." The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a media circus. Reporters packed the space, cameras on tripods, lights blazing, microphones positioned strategically. The Park family sat on one side of the room, the Lim family on the other, both groups flanked by lawyers and advisors, ready to spin whatever happened next. Ji-hyun sat in the front row, her face a mask of careful composure. But Yasmin could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped her purse with white-knuckled intensity. As Hyun-woo and Yasmin entered through a side door, the room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes tracked their movement to the small stage at the front, where two microphones waited. Hyun-woo stepped up to the podium first. Yasmin stood slightly behind him, her presence support rather than spectacle. "Thank you for coming," Hyun-woo began, his voice steady despite the tension radiating through the room. "I've asked you here because I need to set the record straight about what happened at my wedding, or rather, what happened instead of my wedding." He paused, seemed to gather himself. "For 28 years, I've lived according to other people's plans. My father's plans, my family's expectations, the needs of an organization I was born into, but never chose. And for 28 years, I told myself that duty mattered more than happiness, that responsibility outweighed personal desire. Then I met Yasmin Thomas." Cameras swiveled to focus on Yasmin, She forced herself to keep her expression neutral, though her heart was hammering. I won't lie and say it was love at first sight, Hyunwoo continued. What it is the first time I've ever looked at someone and thought, this is what it feels like to be seen as a person, instead of as a tool. Mr. Lim, a reporter shouted. Are you saying your engagement to Miss Park was forced? I'm saying it was arranged, Hyunwoo corrected. Arranged without my input, without consideration for what I might want, in service of an alliance between families that treat their children like bargaining chips. Mrs. Lim stood abruptly. This is not the time or place for what? Hyunwoo interrupted, and the steel in his voice made everyone, including his mother, go quiet. For honesty? For finally saying out loud what everyone in this room already knows? That our families build empires on the backs of people who never get to choose their own lives? The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras flashed frantically. Ji-hyun stood now, her voice cutting through the chaos. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing both our families. For what? For a woman you barely know? Before Hyunwoo could respond, Yasmin stepped forward to the second microphone. Her hands shook, but her voice came out clear. You keep saying he barely knows me, she said, addressing Ji-hyun directly. But he knows me better in 1 week than you would have known him in a lifetime of arranged marriage. Because he knows I see him, not his family name, not his inheritance, just him. You have no right to speak here, Mr. Park said, standing. I have every right, Yasmin shot back, surprised by the strength in her own voice. Because you keep talking about me like I'm an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved, a complication in your business deals, but I'm a person, and so is he. She turned to face the room, to face all the cameras and reporters and powerful families. Hyunwoo didn't ruin a wedding for me. He saved his own life. And yes, I helped him do it. And I'd do it again, in a heartbeat. Even though you've lost your visa? A reporter called out. Even though you're being deported? Yasmin's breath caught, but she nodded. Even though, because some things are worth fighting for, and a person's right to choose their own life. She glanced at Hyunwoo, is worth all the consequences that come with it. Hyunwoo took her hand, threading their fingers together, and faced the cameras as a united front. I am no longer the Lim heir, he said clearly. I've been disowned by my family, cut off from all resources associated with their organization. And we're leaving Seoul to build a life that belongs to us, instead of to anyone else's expectations. You're making a mistake, his father's voice carried from the back of the room. Walking away from power, from protection, from everything we've built? You'll regret this. Maybe, Hyunwoo acknowledged. But I'd rather regret my own choices than resent everyone else's. He turned to Yasmin, and in front of hundreds of witnesses, he cupped her face in his hands. You asked me once what I wanted. Here's my answer. I want mornings where I wake up next to someone who chose me back. I want to build something that's mine, not inherited. I want to look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back at me. His forehead touched hers. And I want you. Not for 3 minutes. Not until the family stop hunting us. Just you. For as long as you'll have me. Tears stung Yasmin's eyes. That was supposed to be 3 minutes. Hyunwoo smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. It still is. The first 3 minutes of the rest of my life. He kissed her, then gentle, reverent, in front of every camera and every person who'd tried to keep them apart. And the room exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Family members shouted objections. Flashes went off like strobes. But Yasmin and Hyunwoo stayed locked together. A moment of peace in the center of the storm. When they finally pulled apart, Ji-hyun was standing right in front of the stage, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. I hope she's worth it, she said to Hyunwoo, her voice breaking. I hope losing everything is worth 3 minutes of courage. It is, Hyunwoo replied gently. And Ji-hyun? I hope someday you find someone who chooses you the way I've chosen her. Not because it's arranged, but because they can't imagine their life without you. Something in Ji-hyun's expression cracked. She nodded once, then turned and walked away, her bodyguards falling in behind her. Security from both families began moving toward the stage. Hyunwoo grabbed Yasmin's hand, and they ran out a side exit he'd scouted beforehand, through service corridors, out into Seoul's afternoon chaos. A car was waiting one of Hyunwoo's remaining loyal contacts, ready to take them to the airport. As they sped through the city, Yasmin watched Seoul blur past her window, the city that had been her home, her prison, her battlefield. Any regrets? Hyunwoo asked quietly. Yasmin thought about her lost jobs, her revoked visa, the life she'd built being dismantled piece by piece. She thought about the danger, the fear, the constant running. Then she looked at the man beside her free for the first time, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, holding her hand like she was his anchor in the storm. "Not even one," she said. At the airport, they checked in for a flight to Tokyo, the first leg of a journey that would eventually take them somewhere neither family could easily reach. Somewhere they could start over without looking over their shoulders every second. As they waited to board, Yasmin's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You won, but this isn't over. The families don't forget." She showed it to Hyun-woo, who read it and sighed. "They're right. We'll be looking over our shoulders for a long time. Together, though," Yasmin said. "Together," he agreed. Their flight was called. As they stood to board, Hyun-woo pulled Yasmin close one more time. 3 minutes, he murmured against her hair. "That's all I asked for, and you gave me a lifetime." "The lifetime isn't guaranteed," Yasmin pointed out. "We could still get killed by vengeful crime families." "True." He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious but his eyes warm. "But even if we only get a few months, a few years, they'll be ours. Completely ours." They boarded the plane hand in hand, leaving Seoul behind, leaving the families, the alliances, the arranged marriages, and power struggles, leaving everything except each other. As the plane lifted off, banking over the city lights, Yasmin pressed her face to the window and watched Korea recede beneath them. She thought about the woman she'd been a week ago, exhausted, invisible, just trying to survive. She wasn't that woman anymore. Now she was someone who'd stood up to criminal empires, who'd fought for love even when it meant losing everything else, who'd chosen courage when safety was the easier option. And beside her was a man who'd walked away from power, from wealth, from everything he'd ever known because she'd taught him what freedom looked like. "Hey," Hyun-woo said softly. "You okay?" Yasmin turned from the window to look at him. "Yeah, I really am. Even though we're broke, homeless, and possibly being hunted by 2 crime families?" "Even though," she confirmed. "Because we're broke, homeless, and possibly being hunted together, and somehow that makes all the difference." He kissed her forehead, pulled her against his shoulder as the plane leveled out at cruising altitude. Below them, Seoul's lights twinkled in the darkness, beautiful and distant, and finally, blessedly behind them. The wedding had collapsed. The alliances had shattered. The families had declared war. But Yasmin and Hyun-woo had won something more valuable than peace or power. They'd won the right to choose their own lives. And as they flew toward an uncertain future, neither of them would have traded that freedom for anything in the world. And that's how 3 minutes of courage turned into a lifetime of freedom. Yasmin and Hyun-woo lost everything: their safety, their certainty, their comfortable lives. But they gained something infinitely more valuable: each other, and the power to write their own story. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible romance stories that prove love is worth fighting for. And don't forget, my friend said I'd never reach 1,000 subscribers, so let's prove her spectacularly wrong. You're part of something special here. Your next adventure is already waiting. Click the video on your screen right now to dive into another unforgettable love story. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.